Hi, welcome back to Ideas Box, and if this is your first time here, then thanks for dropping by. Today's video is a repair that I've done on the auger for our hydraulic post hole borer that goes on our excavator. I was doing some fencing down the back of our block to put a gate in, and it snapped, and it actually snapped where I'd repaired it once before. So in this video I go through what I did the last time and what I'm doing this time, and it is essentially the same repair, so if it lasts for just as long, then I'm alright with that. Alright, let's get into it. So this broke many years ago, and I managed to get it to go back together, and then I put this sleeve over it, and the sleeve, my welded sleeve is what's given way, because you can kind of, there. So that weld around there is cracked. So the plan is, the reason it broke a few years ago, I think, that's 27.5 millimeters. The shear pin was 12 millimeters. So if you do the mathematics on that, the area of this, so the surface area of that, so the cross-sectional area of that is 583 square millimeters. So if you then deduct 27 by 12, which is 324, because 324 is actually 55.5% of the 583. So you've got 44.5% of the metal remaining. So they put too big a shear bolt in. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. There's the old sleeve. You can see where it's let go. The weld's just cracked, and I haven't noticed it in time. Maybe if I'd spotted that before it completely gave way and then ran another weld around it, it might still be on there, who knows. But it's getting a bit flogged out anyway, because this is only Gulf water pipe, so it's not super duper strength steel. In fact, you can see where that's just lipped up there from the pressure on the shear pin. But what I've made is, I've made a new one. That's going to go on there. I'm just going to clean that up enough to hammer that on. I'm going to leave about maybe a 10mm gap, and then I'll weld around that face there. I'll weld around there onto there, and then I'll weld around that face there to join these two bits of pipe together. But first off, I need to drill the same shear pin hole. So I've got to drill a hole in this. So let's see how that's done. I'll show you the best way. It's not super precision, but you need to get these two holes opposite each other. These two holes. So I'll show you how I do that in my workshop. You don't try and measure to the center of a hole, because it's pretty arbitrary where you think the center of the hole is. What you do is you measure to the edge of the hole, which here is 16 millimeters. So I don't forget, I'll scratch it on there. And I know that's a 12mm hole. So 16 and 16. And then half of 12 is 6, so 22 millimeters. So I need the center of the hole on this piece here to be 22 millimeters from the front face. I'll show you what I mean. Given that this edge is a little bit arbitrary because it's been welded, I'll measure from about there, because I can always just take a wee bit off that. So I'll measure from about there. So I've already made a mark, so there's my 22 millimeters. So what you do now is check your vise is nice and tight. Give it a tap with the center punch. So I've selected my drill, which is a 12mm drill, because I prefer the pin to be fairly snug. So what I'll do is, if it's a wee bit tight, I'll just clean it out with a file just ever so slightly, just so I can hammer the shear pin through. Now, in order to drill this, just get my brush. I don't have enough travel on this drill to use this drill in this drill bit to drill this piece of pipe. I'd like to find another piece of pipe and lengthen this so that I've got a bit more reach. But for the moment, all I have to do is So I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this V plate that I made. It's basically for drilling things that are round or lining up things to weld. See the welding marks there? If you line up two pieces of pipe in this, they're pretty much well aligned for my purposes anywho. So I'll get that under there. It just fits, so that's good. Try and get it as vertical as I can so it looks kind of hunky-dory. Turn that on. Give it a spray of Triple X. Right, so just brush all the shavings off. Resist the temptation to grab that. Oh no, it's not too bad. Right, that's not quite through yet, so we'll give it a bit more. Turn that around and get the bit of pipe so it's clear of where you're drilling. There, like I bought one. There, so there's one hole, and then what you do is you drill the next piece in place. I'll show you what I mean. Like I said before, this isn't super precision, so it's only got to line up for a shear pin. Whoops, it's got to come this way a bit, hang on. That's quite a snug fit in there, which is good, but because the more snugger fit it is, it doesn't have the play, so it won't wobble around too much. So let's just check that that's pretty good. Right, so now that that's lined up, I'm going to drill it from this by hand now. It's a little bit of a wrestling match, but it's not too bad. Let's just see if we can get that to line up a little bit better. Just rotate that a tiny bit. There we go. I reckon that's pretty close. So now you have to drill it by hand. So like I said, my drill doesn't quite have the reach to do this in a vise, which would have been nice, but there you go. You've got to work with the equipment that you've got, haven't you? So at least I can spray some Treflex in there. Because I had to hold this like that in relation to the vise, which puts this off the edge of the bench, I've just nailed a big piece of wood there because this vise doesn't swivel, which is a shame, but there you go. The vise on my welding bench swivels, but I do swivel that from time to time, so this one here I tend to find ways to work around it. So that's what I've done. I've nailed this piece of wood so it can sort of sit like that. So it's easy enough to do, you just got to think about solutions to problems. I did hear someone say one time that there's no such thing as a problem, just a solution waiting to be found. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but I guess it's a good principle, isn't it? I firmly believe a couple of things, and one of them is never trust a tradesman that doesn't readily admit to spending a portion of his time fixing his own fuck-ups. Now I need to plug that hole, otherwise the load from this will deform this collar, so I need to plug that hole. I could just fill it with weld, but I've got a better idea. I've got this piece of 12mm steel rod. I'm going to put that in there. Just going to hammer that in there. There we go. Just check that's flush, because I'd like it all the way through. Oh, that's good, yep. So now I'll weld around there, and then I'll just cut that off. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. Actually, what I'll do first is I'll clean up around the galv. If you know anything about MIG welding, you'll know that surface preparation does lead for a better weld. Definitely does. Once again, you don't get sparks from galv, you get sparks from steel. So if you're starting to get sparks, you know you're through the galv. So I'll put my pin back in there. A little flat end like that. Yep. Right, let's weld that, shall we? Got my new welding jacket. Because I went to have a skin check. In Australia we have skin checks done because of the sun and the UV and all that kind of thing. So I had a skin check done and the doctor got very upset with the number of small burns I had on my arms. I get all of that? Yep. So now I'll cut that off with a cutting disc. Just smooth it off a wee bit so it doesn't look quite so ugly. And that's that part of the repair done at least. Here's a handy workshop hint. If you don't have the right grinder spanner, you can use a different size one. You just put one of the pins in there and one of the pins on the side of the wheel and just give it a... And no, it wasn't very tight, but I'm only using cutting discs so they're not getting loaded up, because loading up the vibration and the load on the thread is what tightens this collar down. Resisting the temptation to grab that by hand, I'll now take that over to the grinder and just clean that up a wee bit. It's kind of, the main thing is it's plugged that hole inside so that metal around it can't deform. So that's the main purpose of that. It doesn't look very pretty, but it is what it is. It means making a whole new thingamajig again. So 10mm is there. It's probably right. So 10mm is there. So I'll just make a centre punch mark. There we go. So now I've really got to get that on there up to that centre punch mark. There we go. How straight is that? The reference face I've got is working a reference off of there. Just got to try and square it up just vaguely off of that face there. That doesn't look too bad. Once again, this is a hydraulic post hole borer off of a Chinese excavator, so I mean, how straight is it going to be? Actually, I know what I can do. Where's that piece of pipe that I had before? Because this leans further out, it'll give me a bit more of a reference. That looks fairly straight. Ah, it's got to come down a wee bit. Now to run some big welds around there and hold that on, and then I think that's that job done. I think, pretty sure. There's a lot of mass here. I don't think that's going to affect. There's a lip seal that you can see there. Hang on, I'll show you. So there's a lip seal there, but there's a lot of mass here. I don't think that's going to get hot enough to affect that, because the weld's going to be way over here. So see how we go. It should be okay, I think. Right, that's it tacked in 4 places, so it shouldn't shift now. I'll just put one over here. Always use tip dip if you're using anything with galv on it. It just saves getting all the build up, all the snot and shit in blocking the gas flow. Right, so that should be good now to reattach the auger to. I won't be able to try it out, but I think that'll work. That's actually a better repair than I did the first time many years ago. So let's put that together and see how it looks. Put that together. Got to get that hole lined up, which can take a little bit of swearing. But that's okay. Got to swear a little bit, haven't you? There we go. Got to come round a tiny bit. Oops. There we go. A little bit more. A little bit of... Oops, too far. Oh, that must be awful close. Might have to just clean this pin up. It's been through a... No. Gonna have to do it properly. Dab nabbit. There we go. So all I had to do was, because I've drilled this in relation to this, I didn't notice the orientation, so because the hole's kind of slightly on the piss, I've just had to turn this through 180 degrees and I've got that to go through first go. So then you put the R-clips in, and you can use R-clips because they're doing bugger all, to be honest. And there you go, all fixed and ready to go. Won't be using it anytime soon, but it's fixed for when I need it. After I welded this on, did all this welding, I grabbed a hold of it here to, well, I felt how hot that was. And this up here where this oil seal is, this steel collar here, that was not even as hot as if you'd left it in the sun for a few hours. So I'm not concerned about the heat from the welding affecting that oil seal. I'm almost certain that it won't, because this section here is a gearbox. I know because there's a grease nipple. Where is it? Just there. So this section here is some sort of maybe a reduction gearbox, and this section here is the hydraulics. So worst comes to worst, if I have to fix that, maybe I can pull this apart, give me a bit more look into that. Originally, when we bought this was a plain steel shaft, but because it broke right up here, I had to make this into a socket and then get a piece of I had it turned up. A friend of mine turned it up for me in his lathe. I basically replicate that steel shaft into here, so the steel shaft that's in here goes between this and this, like a pin there with the two sockets. So this socket's welded to the old broken shaft, as you saw earlier in the video. Originally the excavator's auger came with a cast iron tip, but what we found was every time we used it, it would clog up with clay and then just spin and heat up, and it really wasn't very effective at all. So what I did was, I found a piece of pipe that would fit up inside that, and I've welded this. This is off of our 300mm auger for our petrol post hole borer. I don't reckon we were ever going to use that, so I've taken this off of the end of that and I've welded it onto that, so this has now got a decent point on it, because that other one was cast iron, it would just fill up with clay. These here are new auger bits that I've welded on there, and also underneath there. And I'll just roll that over, and there, but they're starting to round off, so it might be time to change them. So let's have a go at doing that. So I've turned that one around so it's presenting a square edge to the hole rather than a curved edge, which is what causes the problems. It doesn't drill very well. So I've turned that one around so it's presenting a square edge as I'm drilling a hole. So it's only cheap Chinese carbide, but it actually doesn't seem too bad. So I'll now get another one of these from there, one that's sharp, or I might just sharpen this one, although I think if I sharpen it, it'll make it too short. Let's have a look. Yeah, I think if I sharpen that, it'll make it too short. And also, what I've done is, I've cut them off of there with a cutting disc, and I've ground them nice and flush. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to make some new teethy blades to go on there, because this original one just came, honestly, it just came with that little steel wedge there, which looks fine, right? But it's flat on the bottom. So once the hole starts to stop digging, it just has a flat face that it's presenting to the hole that you're digging, and it just makes a flat bottom hole, and then this edge here can't dig in. This edge needs to protrude, the cutting edge needs to protrude further, not quite that far, but you get the idea. The cutting edge needs to protrude further than this flat face here, or it'll cease to cut. So let's see how I go about that. This is a blade from an agricultural stock feed mixer, and what I'm going to do is, this one's been removed because it's pretty much worn out, but it should still do for what I want. I'm going to cut a section out of this, drill and tap it, and then drill and tap, I'm going to cut a section out of this, drill a couple of holes, drill and tap there, and then mount that on there, because I think that'll work fine for what I want. I've just drilled it, and I was able to drill it without too much trouble, so I should be able to drill it and tap it, because I want to make one for on there as well. So let's see how that goes. I've marked out two of these. I need them 30 by 55, so there's two at 30 by 55, and this mixer blade, what they do is, this face here is face hardened, and this side here is what wears. So as it wears, it'll be presenting, it wears that edge there, and it leaves this little bit here quite sharp. So we'll see how they go for drilling in the ground, and if they're no good, that's why I'm not going to weld them this time. I'm going to drill them and tap them. Right, I've made two of them, got the holes the same, and I'm going to drill them. I've drilled through them. That wasn't hard to drill once I sharpened the drill, so that's nothing special, that's just some sort of probably good quality steel, but not hardened is what I'm getting at. And then I need to drill and tap this face here. I need to drill there, tap that, put these little bolts in the top so the bolt heads will wear away, but what I'll do is I'll just keep an eye on that, and before they wear away, the next time I make these, I'll countersink them, and I'll get some decent countersink screws so they're at least recessed below the steel so they don't wear. But this should last a little while anyway. Let's see how we go, shall we? Rightio, so I've finished placing the cutting inserts on this. I've had to use hex head bolts because I don't have any countersunk 6mm bolts. So I'm going to order some on the interwebs, and if they turn up before I need to use this, then I'll take these off, countersink them, and use countersunk screws. So I've done that one. That one. What else? I've put that carbide piece back on there, and I've changed plans. I've resharpened that one and put that one back on. So that one's still got a fair bit of life left in it. So there we go. That should work now. Should work like a bought one, or even better than a bought one. This is, like I said before, this is off the old 300mm auger that we got with our petrol post hole borer, and I didn't really feel like hanging onto a 300mm auger trying to drill into the soil. And this is good that this wobbles around, I think, because it keeps changing the angle that that's meeting the ground at. It's like when you're drilling into a piece of steel and you can just gently rock the drill from side to side, and it just changes the angle, and just so it's not running flat against flat. What I've done is, so that I put this on the right way around, because as you saw before, the holes are a wee bit on the piss, so it's got to go a certain way. I'll put a centre punch mark there and there, so that if I get them on the same side, then that pin goes in without too much grief. Just a little bit of a tap with the hammer and it goes in, which is just about perfect. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Click like and subscribe, and don't forget that notification bell too. Alright then, bye for now.